Hey everyone, it's Kyle Wagner. Welcome back to another insanely simple strategy to transform student learning at your school. Again, I'm your host, Kyle Wagner, the author of a best-selling book, Power of Simple, guaranteed to simplify your life as an educator and transform student learning at your school. Whether you're a teacher, whether you're an administrator, whether you're a middle manager, whether you're a school leader, whether you write about education, whether you're a consultant, whether you're just an interested parent, or perhaps thinking about starting a charter school, or sending your student to a charter school, or just want something different from education, this book has got something for everyone, and I'm hoping it starts a revolution in education. And by revolution, I don't mean the kind of physical revolution or people rebelling against systems. I mean the kind of revolution that's intellectual and that will really lead to growth and reform, not just in this country, but across the entire globe. So get yourself a copy of The Power of Simple, because all the strategies that we're looking at is from this particular book. Now today's session is going to look at how do we actually structure student learning? How do we transform student learning and get students producing meaningful work? Okay, and by meaningful work, I don't mean meaningful work like they wrote a really good essay and it's great for the teacher, and the teacher gives them a high mark and says, great essay. I mean the kind of meaningful work that actually is transformative outside of school. Work that can actually make a difference in the real world. And today, you're going to find out how to do that. So, let's do a quick review. Okay, in case you missed the other lessons, we talked about how to create your simple vision statement for student learning based off a couple of the things that you truly believe about students and about the way they learn. We talked about how to go from the concrete to the abstract rather than the abstract to the concrete. We looked at how do we restructure scheduling to allow for this. We looked at how do we form these interdisciplinary teams, small teams, and restructure learning that way. We also looked about how do you differentiate learning so you can individualize it for your students. And just yesterday, we looked at what's the starting point for planning. So once you have an idea for your particular unit, what's the starting point for planning? And we talked about how you have to actually leverage on experts in the field, in the real field outside of school. And those experts will help you to have leveraged a really well-designed project. Okay, so we're gonna leave where we left off yesterday. And just in case you missed it, we talked about this again being the beginning of the unit. This is the beginning of the learning journey for students. There's a question that sets everything in motion, one central question. And at the end here, you see there's a product or something that students are going to create, a simple, concrete product that students are going to create to answer this question. Now, typically, you will start with that question, right? And a lot of planning documents will ask you to start with what is the big question. I would challenge you to say, rather than start with the big question, think about what are the big understandings you want students to get out of whatever the interdisciplinary unit is. And a way to structure those understandings is, again, to have talked to those experts to find out what is it that students are going to produce at the end of this particular lesson, or the end of this particular unit, rather. When we led a small business units, we talked to entrepreneurs in the field and said students are going to create a small business that helps to serve a community need. Bingo. Simple, small statement about what students are going to produce. When we actually looked at the global food crisis that was hitting Beijing, we said students are going to produce a food production model and a proposal for how that food production model will help solve this global crisis. This is work that people actually in the real field are doing. Bam. That's another example of a simple product. Another thing we said is when students were going to explore their third culture identities, students will write a book, they will write and publish a book to explain their third cultural identities to an audience that does not know about third culture. Okay? So that is what you're getting towards. You're getting towards a very simple statement for what students will produce at the end of the unit. That is your starting point. You start from the end and you work backwards. This is backwards planning. If you're familiar with UBD design, understanding by design, by McTighe, this is exactly the way in which he proposes to do your learning. So this is very, very good research-based way of doing the learning. Start with what students are going to produce and work backwards. Now in this case, I gave you an example. Let's say that in talking with all the experts on global warming, you might have talked to electric companies, you might have talked with car companies, you might have talked with some governmental organizations, some NGOs, and you determine after talking with all of them that one of the big pieces of work that people are doing in the real world is creating these energy audits and a household plan for how you will reduce energy consumption. So that's a simple statement. After talking with all of these people, you've determined that students will create an energy audit for their own home and an energy savings plan. Very simple statement, okay? So I want to talk a little bit about how do you know you have created a good final product, okay? And here's a checklist for you, all right? If you have your pen and paper out, you want to take notes or you want to pause the video, that's fine. You can't really pause it now because I'm live. Later on you can pause it and take notes. Here's your little checklist for how do I know that I have created a good product. First, can you define in one sentence what students will produce? If you can define in one sentence or less what students will produce at the end of the unit, it's a pretty concrete, clear outcome. Bam, so maybe you've hit that. Second, does it allow for rigorous content? Does it allow for rigorous content for you to explore? And by that I mean, if this is going to be an interdisciplinary unit between math, science, and humanities, what you ask students to complete, does it demand a lot of content knowledge? 3, can this be done in one night? Okay? Could this be one in one night? If it can, it's probably not the best product that you're creating for students. Make sure that this is something that actually is going to take some time to complete that energy audit and create that actual plan for reducing household consumption. That is going to take some time. So yes, we know that it has hit that point, and make sure that it's a long-term experience. Okay? Number 4, is this something that people actually do in the real world? Do people create energy audits? Do people actually create energy saving plans? I can attest that that is true, unfortunately, because I had a very high SDG&E bill, and I know for a fact that energy audits and energy saving plans are created not only to help save the dollar of the actual consumer, but also to help out the environment and reduce, you got it, global warming. Okay, so those are 4 good checkpoints. And 5, I would say 5, does it allow for a pretty balanced acquisition of content? Sometimes you're going to find that some projects are very science intensive, math intensive, humanities intensive, social studies intensive. You want a nice balance. Does it allow for equal balance of acquisition of content that students are going to have to get? Okay, I'm only going to write in one more number for you here, and this is just to allow you to think, how long should this process take? Some people are wondering, how long should an interdisciplinary unit last? And I'll tell you, it's like a roller coaster. When you're going up the roller coaster, you've created excitement. Imagine going up the Goliath on Magic Mountain. The thing's climbing up each of the tracks, and you get to the top of the roller coaster. That is the apex. That is the climax. That is like the big finale in the movie. That is like in Star Wars when Luke Skywalker is facing off against his dad, Darth Vader. That's the climax. Same thing in a project. You do not want that project to go downhill for too long because it's going to lose its excitement. And I found that the ideal amount of time is 6 weeks. Okay? Think about it. 6 weeks is a good ideal time for a project. Now, it depends on the age level of your students, but that's about the amount of attention span that they can sustain and keep interest in a project. 6 weeks is a magic number. I'd say 6 to 8 weeks. Less, okay, maybe 5, maybe 4, depends on the project. Anything more and you're going to lose their interest. Okay? Again, I'm providing you with one strategy a day. I don't want to confuse you. Once you have thought about what your interdisciplinary topic is going to be, once you've thought about what the product is that you're going to ask students to produce, tomorrow's lesson is going to be how do you structure a question that is going to get them there. Power of simple. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, give it a love, give it a comment. Again, I'm doing this for you guys. I want to simplify your lives. So just give me an indication of how this is helping you out. And feel free to share this with others because, again, let's make this open source. Share it with the world. And again, I'll make one last push for my book. A lot of this, you can find this in the section on integrated learning. I'm basically going through the book step by step in sequencing our lessons according to these lessons in the book. So this will be really helpful. If you have the power of simple, once you watch a lesson, find it reflected here in the book. This is going to give you some practical ways in which to apply these lessons. All right? So I'm going to leave you with this. Okay, again, this is my quote. This is what I believe about simplicity. Confucius, very wise man. Confucius said, life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated. And then the other one I wanted to share was from Pete Seeger. Any darn fool can make something complex. It takes true genius to make something simple. And I'll tell you what, you want to produce great outcomes for your students, give them a simple task, because the complexity does not arise out of all the teaching that you do. The complexity arises out of the need to create that simple task at the end. I taught at High Tech High. If you're watching this and you taught at High Tech High, you probably know the famous words of the founders, Larry Rosenstock. Okay, simple structures beget complex designs. If you have a simple structure for learning, you're going to get a complex design. Complex structures beget simple designs. Give students room to explore, give students room to create, give students room to be innovative, and you will be amazed by what they will produce. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Kyle Wagner, your host. I will see you again tomorrow for an insanely simple strategy about how to get students to that point. Bye-bye.